The bells tore through the morning mist like sharpened steel, striking Sebastian Philip's chest harder than any hand could. Each toll felt like a hammer on his ribs, a drumbeat of inevitability he could not escape. He stood before the coffin of his father, the Duke of Ravenshire, hands trembling inside gloves that had always felt too tight, as if the leather itself mourned alongside him. The velvet coverlet that draped the coffin was heavy with gloom, and the scent of waxed wood and lilies pressed into his nose like a cruel reminder. Nothing remained the same. Not the man who had raised him, not the estate that bled money, not the title he had just inherited. Around him, mourners whispered with the hushed elegance of English high society, their faces painted with polite sorrow and hidden calculation. The Dowager Duchess, his mother, stood like a marble sentinel, chin raised, eyes sharp as the crystal chandeliers above. She did not mourn, not really. She weighed, measured, and plotted, as if grief could be balanced against a ledger. Her lips parted, voice smooth but pointed. Sebastian, the estate cannot survive without a proper match. A wealthy heiress would stabilize Ravenshire, restore its prestige. He looked at her, at the polished black heels planted like stakes on the floor, at the jeweled hands folded over embroidered gloves. And he realized he had been trained all his life for this moment, to charm, to bow, to marry advantageously. But none of it prepared him for the truth that gnawed at the corners of his mind. I am unready. I am unworthy. And the estate, it is dying. The first whisper of wind through the open French windows carried the scent of rain off the moors, cold and sharp. Sebastian's gaze wandered beyond the stone terraces, past the manicured gardens, and for a fleeting second, he saw the world outside Ravenshire, the sun on distant harbors, the roar of merchant ships, the promise of the Caribbean. He swallowed, throat tight. I cannot fix this estate from behind these walls. Moments later, a servant's whisper brought him back. The papers from London, my lord the accountant's, the words dissolved in the damp chill of the hall. He imagined stacks of documents, numbers that refused to add, ledgers full of debts and failures that his father had left unresolved. His signature, once thought to carry weight, felt lighter than the mist curling at the window panes. Sebastian's hands clenched at his sides. His heart pounded, not from grief, but from an unfamiliar spark, defiance. The court, the Dowager Duchess, the obligations, the entire weight of Ravenshire. It was theirs to wield, not his. He could follow their script, bow and marry, and continue the decay. Or he could step beyond, risk everything, and learn what it truly meant to lead. By that evening, he had made his decision. The servants whispered of urgency, the candles flickered with restless light, and the carriage waited. He packed lightly, a few clothes, a small trunk of essentials, and the last letters his father had left unsent, sealed with wax. No jewels, no inherited treasures. He carried only resolve and a determination that surprised even himself. The streets of Birmingham were slick with rain, carriage wheels splashing through puddles as he traveled to the port. Salt air clawed at his senses as the ship loomed, black hull cutting through mist like a promise of escape. No gilded halls here, no polite judgment, just the roar of the sea, the smell of brine, the raw tang of danger. Sebastian stepped onto the deck, boots clanging against wet planks. The crew eyed him with curiosity and suspicion, a young noble in clothes far too plain, hands uncalloused but eager. He swallowed the sting of self-consciousness, straightened his shoulders, and met the gaze of the ship's captain, a man with salt-streaked hair and eyes that had seen storms rage and men break. I am Lord Sebastian Philip, he said, voice steady though his heart roared. I wish to learn the ways of commerce, of trade, of survival. The captain chuckled, a low, rasping sound. You'll learn quickly, lad, or drown trying. and as the tide pulled them from the dock, Sebastian felt the first thrill of freedom, and fear course through his veins. The city of England shrank behind him, all that was familiar fading under gray skies. Ahead lay the unknown, the hum of distant ports, the challenge of foreign markets, the test of his character, and the chance to prove he was more than a title on a page. Below deck, the smell of tar and salt lingered. He traced his fingers over the coursewood, listening to the creak of rigging above and the slap of waves against the hull. Every sense screamed that this voyage would change him, force him to confront failure and ingenuity alike. And he welcomed it. In that moment, he did not see himself as a duke. He saw himself as a man untested, standing at the edge of a world that promised both danger and revelation. Somewhere in the Caribbean, someone would challenge his mind, his assumptions, and, if fate allowed, even his heart. He exhaled, letting the mist of doubt mix with the salt-laden air. "I will learn," he whispered. "Even if it kills me, I will learn." The wind shifted. The sails caught it, and the journey began. The clatter of coins on the worn oak table echoed through the counting house like gunfire, snapping Sebastian from the haze of the ship's voyage. He stepped inside, boots heavy against the creaking floor, and froze. There, beneath the amber glow of oil lamps, a young woman's hands moved with a precision that made the ledgers almost sing. Every stroke of her quill was deliberate, every calculation flawless, as if she commanded the numbers rather than served them. Her eyes, dark and unflinching, lifted briefly. "You'll disturb the balance if you lean so close, my lord," she said, voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through the murmuring clerks. Sebastian blinked. He had expected fear, hesitation, maybe even subservience. Instead, he found intelligence, confidence, and a defiance that startled him. Her wrists were bound in thin iron shackles, yet she moved as if nothing chained her mind. I am Lord Sebastian Philip," he stammered, "newly made Duke of Ravenshire. I've come to examine the ways trade is conducted firsthand." Her gaze lingered, skeptical. "Trade, my lord, is nothing without understanding. Numbers can mislead the careless, just as appearances can fool the unwary." A spark lit within him, a challenge. He placed a sheet of his father's estate accounts on the table, the ink smudged, the totals inconsistent. "Then perhaps you can correct what my accountants failed to reconcile. If you can, I may have learned something valuable today." Her eyes narrowed. "If you wish to test me, my lord, hand me your accounts." The simplicity of her words belied the weight of them. Sebastian handed over the papers, feeling a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. She studied them silently, quill flying over numbers with the confidence of a maestro conducting a symphony. Within minutes, she had traced errors, corrected totals, and annotated discrepancies that had stumped London's finest accountants for months. Sebastian leaned against the table, heart hammering. Every corrected line, every recalculated figure struck like a revelation. This was no ordinary clerk. This was a mind unbroken by chains, sharper than his own, and more courageous than anyone he had ever known. "Impossible," he muttered, though it was awe, not disbelief, in his voice. "How?" She looked up, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Impossible is only what people tell you it is. I see what is, not what they expect me to see." Even as he admired her skill, Sebastian's thoughts darkened. She was a slave. She should not be standing here, wielding intelligence like a sword, yet bound by iron and law. You should not be here under these conditions," he said quietly, almost to himself. Her hands did not falter. "And yet here I am. I survive because I must, my lord. Because to be invisible is to be forgotten. And I refuse to be forgotten." He felt a surge of something he had never felt before: admiration, fear, and a deep, restless curiosity. If this mind were mine to rely on, could Ravenshire be saved? The thought hit him with the force of revelation. This woman could change everything. But the chains on her wrists, the cruel ownership of a man she could not escape, tormented him more than the ruin of his estate. The counting house was silent save for the scratching of her quill. Sebastian's gaze swept the room, noting the indifferent clerks. The smell of ink and paper mingled with a faint tang of sweat and sea air. He realized painfully that nothing in his life had prepared him for this. The brilliance of a woman whose very existence defied the world's laws, whose freedom was yet claimed by cruelty, whose mind could unlock the salvation of a kingdom if only he could find a way to claim her loyalty without violating her autonomy. "Tell me your name," he said finally, voice low, reverent. "Amara," she replied, eyes meeting his steadily, defiance and dignity coiling around her like armor. The name resonated, simple yet powerful, echoing in the hollow spaces of his doubt and longing. Sebastian knew in that moment that his journey was no longer about escaping England or learning trade. It was about earning trust, navigating moral peril, and confronting the chains society had placed around both of them. Amara's head tilted slightly. "And why do you care what I am capable of, my lord?" He swallowed hard. Because I need to know if someone like you could save more than just numbers. Could you save a legacy?" She paused, quill suspended above the paper. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then she set the quill down deliberately, shackles rattling, and looked directly at him. "A legacy is nothing without honor. And honor," she added, voice softening just slightly, "is earned, not inherited." Sebastian felt the weight of her words settle like stones in his chest. He could see it now, the challenge ahead. Not just the estate, not just the numbers, but the soul of a partnership, the precarious balance of trust, freedom, and intellect. Moments later, she rose, stretching muscles tense with silent years of servitude. Her eyes lingered on him, unyielding, as if testing the very core of his character. "If you believe me capable, then you must also be willing to face what it means to stand beside someone like me," she said. He nodded, swallowing a lump in his throat. "I am willing," he said, though his mind raced with unspoken questions. How far would he go? How much risk could he bear? And more importantly, could he reconcile admiration with respect, without turning it into pity? The creak of the ship's rigging, the distant cries of gulls, the scent of salt in the air, it all surged through him, mingling with the heat of this encounter. He knew deep down that the future of Ravenshire, and perhaps his own heart, hinged on this woman whose mind was free even when her body was not. Before he could speak further, a shadow passed across the doorway, a reminder that Amara was bound to another master, that the world outside this room would not bend to their needs. And Sebastian realized with chilling clarity, saving Ravenshire was only the beginning. Saving her would be the true test. The fire of resolve burned hotter than fear. "I will find a way." And in that instant, as the counting house's lamps flickered against the encroaching dusk, Sebastian knew that nothing, not society, not duty, not his own inexperience, would stop him from confronting the impossible. Amara's master slammed the ledger shut with a force that rattled the wooden table, making Sebastian flinch. His eyes burned with anger and disbelief. "You dare question me, boy," the man spat, voice thick with arrogance and disdain. "You think a duke can simply waltz in and take what he fancies?" Sebastian's jaw tightened. The room smelled of sweat, tobacco, and ink, a bitter cocktail that clung to the oppressive heat. He had come to test Amara, to see if her mind could untangle the chaos left by his father's neglect. But now, confronted by the sheer cruelty of ownership, he realized he was not dealing merely with numbers. He was confronting the chains that bound her, the same chains that gnawed at the dignity of every human in this room. "She is not property," Sebastian said, voice low, deliberate. "She is capable, brilliant, and free in every way that matters. You cannot own that." The man laughed, a dark, grinding sound. "Freedom? Huh. Freedom is a luxury for fools. You are a fool, my lord, if you think her talents are yours to command." He leaned closer, eyes narrowing, lips curling into a sneer. "Do you wish to see her fall back into her rightful place?" Sebastian's pulse raced. The weight of his father's estate, the looming debts, the whispered threats of financiers, all of it pressed down harder than the man's words. And yet, in the fire of indignation, a plan began to form, wild and reckless. He would not bow to this cruelty. He would not leave Amara to her chains. "I will wager," he said, voice cutting through the room like a blade. "A trade. If I succeed, her contract becomes mine. If I fail, then you may take the title of Ravenshire itself. Do you accept?" The master's eyes widened, disbelief mingled with amusement. "You would gamble a duke's fortune for a slave's freedom? Madness." "Agreed," he hissed, slamming his palm to the table. "But mark my words, Philip, you will lose." Sebastian exhaled, hands trembling despite his resolve. "Then I must win," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Sebastian entered the merchant trade with nothing but a reckless confidence and the faint guidance of instinct. He pored over cargo manifests, negotiated deals with men whose tongues were as sharp as their knives, and risked every coin that remained from his inheritance. Each decision brought sweat and nausea, doubt clawing at his mind. The stakes were higher than he had imagined. One misstep could cost him Ravenshire, and more painfully, Amara's chance at freedom. Meanwhile, Amara watched from the sidelines, a mixture of frustration and admiration coiling around her like a serpent. "Do you think your title will protect her or yourself?" she asked one evening, eyes reflecting the glow of lanterns on the dock. Sebastian met her gaze, heart pounding. "Neither," he admitted. "Only my wits, and perhaps courage I did not know I possessed." She let out a bitter laugh. "Courage? You gamble her life as if it were a coin toss. I am not a prize to be won." He stepped closer, voice quieter, urgent. "I do not see you as a prize. I see you as indispensable. Ravenshire dies without your mind." "And I," he paused, searching her eyes. "I cannot leave you here." Her breath hitched. She wanted to recoil, to retreat into the safety of silence, yet something in his sincerity tethered her in place. "Freedom is not a gift you can buy," she said finally, voice trembling with the weight of years spent in chains. "It is a debt, and now you will carry it forever." Sebastian felt a pang of guilt mixed with awe. He had thought to rescue her, to wield his power for her sake, but she was right. This was not charity. This was accountability. This was partnership forged in fire, in risk, and in a shared defiance of the world. The trade deal came to its climax under the blazing Caribbean sun. Ships loaded with sugar, spices, and precious silks jostled for docking rights. Sebastian negotiated with every ounce of cunning he could muster, each word a gamble, each decision a blade-edge choice. Sweat stung his eyes. The heat pressed down, relentless, like the weight of destiny itself. Hours later, as the sun dipped low, Sebastian received the final tally. He had won, barely, by a margin so thin it made his stomach twist. Victory roared through him, but it was not the triumph of wealth or title. It was the raw, undeniable reality that Amara's freedom was now his to honor. He turned to her, parchment in hand, quill poised to finalize the manumission. "It is done," he said simply, voice trembling. "You are free. No master, no chains, no debts. Your mind, your life, your choices, yours alone." Amara's hands shook as she accepted the papers. Her eyes met his, fury and disbelief warring with relief. "You risked everything for me?" He nodded. "Everything. I would risk Ravenshire itself if it meant you could stand without chains." For a moment, silence wrapped around them, punctuated only by the distant creak of rigging and the call of seabirds. And then slowly she smiled, a tentative, wary curl of lips that spoke of trust yet to be earned. "Then we will see if your courage matches your words, my lord." That night, aboard the ship bound for England, the storm broke. Rain lashed against the deck, waves slammed into the hull, and the wind tore at sails and sanity alike. Sebastian and Amara worked side by side, the chaos forcing vulnerability. Hands brushed, eyes met, breaths mingled in the candlelight below deck. In the roar of a tempest, each felt the fragile spark of connection ignite, tempered by respect and mutual defiance. "If you were born free," Sebastian whispered, voice barely audible over the storm, "England would tremble before you." Her eyes glimmered with challenge, storm matching storm. "Then let it tremble," she answered. And as the waves tossed their vessel toward the horizon, Sebastian understood. The real journey had only begun. Ravenshire's fate, their freedom, and perhaps even their hearts were entwined in ways neither could yet measure. The storm outside mirrored the storm within, wild, unpredictable, and full of the promise of change. Lightning split the night sky, illuminating the shuddering deck of the merchant ship as waves crashed over the railing, drenching Sebastian and Amara to the bone. The wind tore at sails and sanity alike, each gust a reminder that the ocean offered no mercy. He gripped the rigging, knuckles white, heart hammering against his ribs. "Hold steady," he shouted over the roar, though it was as much a command to himself as to her. Amara's hair whipped across her face, eyes blazing with equal parts fear and exhilaration. "I am steady," she yelled back, voice defiant, though her hands trembled as she tightened ropes beside him. In that instant, Sebastian realized she was no longer the girl in the counting house. She was a force, untamed and brilliant, and he had placed her freedom in the same storm that threatened to swallow them both. Moments earlier, she had stared at him across the table of the Caribbean trading hall, fire in her dark eyes, as he signed the last parchment of her manumission. He had risked every coin, every claim, even the honor of Ravenshire itself. And now, the universe seemed to demand a test of courage equal to the gamble he had made. "Why did you risk everything?" she asked later, as the storm subsided into furious rolling waves. Her voice was raw, unfiltered, a mixture of accusation and awe. "My freedom is not a prize." Sebastian's coat clung to his shoulders, soaked and cold. "I do not see it as a prize. I see it as truth. You are brilliant, Amara, and the world would be poorer for leaving you in chains." Her eyes narrowed, reflecting both anger and a cautious admiration. "Truth? You make it sound so noble, but you played a dangerous game. I could have lost everything, the same as you." "I knew the stakes," he admitted, "and I knew I could not leave you there. His voice faltered slightly, "you deserve the chance to live unbound, to prove what you are capable of. And I cannot imagine Ravenshire or myself without you in it." Amara let out a long breath, watching the waves crash like sentinels against the hull. "Freedom is not given lightly, my lord. It cannot be purchased with a signature or a coin. It comes with risk, with responsibility." He stepped closer, feeling the heat of her gaze even as the chill of a storm soaked him through. "Then we shoulder it together," he said simply. "Not master and servant, not duke and slave. Partners. if you will allow it." For a long moment she did not answer, and he feared he had overstepped. But finally, her lips curved into a reluctant, guarded smile. "Then let it be known, we are equals, and our success is shared, not borrowed." The days at sea were a delicate balance of tension and discovery. Sebastian taught her to read maps, the contours of faraway lands, the hidden patterns of tides. Amara, in turn, tutored him in reading people, in understanding the subtle maneuvers of commerce and deceit. Every night, below deck, they pored over manifests and accounts, the dim glow of lanterns illuminating faces intent with concentration. Their hands brushed over ink-stained pages. The touch lingered longer than necessary, sending currents through them both they could not name. During a particularly treacherous crossing, a rogue wave slammed the deck, throwing them both against the railing. Sebastian caught her by the waist, heart pounding, adrenaline screaming, and she clung to him with an intensity that left no room for pretense. "You are mad," she shouted against the wind, laughter mingling with fear. "Mad for freedom or for you," he countered, voice hoarse, and the storm swallowed his words almost before they could be heard. She froze, chest pressed to his, eyes wide. For the first time, vulnerability cracked through her armor. Do not think me weak, because I am human," she whispered, the words almost lost to the roar of the sea. "I do not," he said softly, brushing a drenched strand of hair from her face. "I see strength in ways this world cannot measure. And he stopped, the truth heavy on his tongue. "I cannot ignore it." Even as the storm raged outside, inside the ship a tempest of another sort brewed, one of longing, of trust tested and earned. Each challenge at sea, each negotiation with merchants and pirates alike, each calculation that balanced profit against survival, forged a bond that was deeper than admiration, yet not yet love. It was partnership, fire forged in risk, in shared triumph, and in the acknowledgement of equal worth. By day, they worked side by side. By night, they talked in whispers, confessions spilling into the lantern-lit corners of the cabin. Sebastian confessed fears of failing Ravenshire, of disappointing his father's memory, of being unworthy of the trust Amara had placed in him. She revealed glimpses of a life spent hiding brilliance, the constant vigilance required to survive enslavement, and the fragility of freedom once won. "You have seen what I can do," she said one night, voice soft, almost wistful. "But the world will not. They will see only a freed slave at your side, and not the mind that saved your estate from ruin." "I do," Sebastian said firmly, leaning closer. "And that is enough for me. The world will have to catch up. I will not, cannot, let your worth be ignored, not now, not ever." The storm outside had passed, leaving the ocean a restless, gleaming expanse under a blanket of stars. The ship rocked gently, lantern light dancing over the wooden deck, and in the quiet that followed, Sebastian and Amara stood shoulder to shoulder, looking out at the horizon. It was the beginning of a journey neither had expected, a journey that would test their courage, their principles, and their hearts. Amara's voice broke the silence. "What happens when we return to England? Will society accept us as equals?" Sebastian's jaw tightened. "They will not. But I will not return without you. We face them together, as we face this storm. And whatever comes, we do it with truth and with honor." She turned to him then, eyes glimmering in the lantern light, and for the first time, something like hope shone there. "Then let us see if your courage is as enduring as your promises, my lord." He reached for her hand, and their fingers entwined naturally, not as master and servant, not as duke and freedwoman, but as allies, as equals, as two minds and hearts daring to defy a world that would rather keep them apart. As the ship pressed forward into the unknown, Sebastian felt a fire he had never known before, a fire born not of title or inheritance, but of connection, trust, and the shared recklessness of a gamble that could change everything. And he knew deep down that whatever England awaited them, whatever society's scorn or shock, he and Amara would face it together, stronger for the storm that had tested them both. The London carriage jolted violently as it struck a deep rut in the cobblestones, throwing Sebastian forward into the polished wooden side of the cabin. Pain shot through his ribs, but it was nothing compared to the weight pressing on his chest. The city, the estate, the whispers of society. They waited like vultures, circling a fallen prey. Beside him, Amara's eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the streets through the rain-streaked window, the reflection of gaslight dancing across her face. She was free, yes, but freedom came at a price that neither of them fully understood yet. The moment they stepped into the estate, the tension struck like a physical blow. Servants bowed low, eyes flicking nervously between them, murmurs following their every step. Rumors had preceded their arrival. The Duke returned from the colonies with a freed slave at his side. The scandal of it hung in the air, heavier than the London fog. Sebastian's jaw clenched as he took in the elegant halls of Ravenshire, polished floors gleaming with ancestral pride, portraits of forebears staring down with judgment. "Do you hear them?" Amara whispered, her voice low, the word them, carrying the weight of every unseen eye in the house. "I hear only the truth," Sebastian replied, each word measured, deliberate. "They will judge, but we have facts, strategy, and each other. That is enough." Amara's lips pressed into a thin line. "They do not see facts. They see color, status, titles. They do not see me. They see a threat to their order." Before Sebastian could respond, a sharp voice cut through the tension. "Sebastian, what madness is this?" The Dowager Duchess appeared in the grand foyer, draped in silks and severity. Her eyes narrowed as they fell upon Amara. "A duke returning with Ea," she faltered, the words choking in her throat, unable to name the scandal adequately. "With a freedwoman? This is unthinkable." Sebastian stepped forward, placing a protective hand near Amara's elbow. "Mother, I will not be shamed for doing what is right. She is not only free, she is invaluable. Ravenshire thrives because of her insight, her intellect. Do you not wish for Ravenshire to survive?" The dowager's lips thinned into a tight line. "I wish for propriety. I wish for respect. And I wish for a duke who knows his place, not one who flaunts his indiscretions like a badge of defiance." Amara's eyes flashed with indignation. "I am no indiscretion," she said, voice steady, cutting through the chill of disapproval. "I saved Ravenshire. I see the corruption that drained this estate dry. I know the numbers, the secrets, and the lies that your late steward hid." Sebastian's gaze locked with hers, a silent acknowledgment passing between them. She had uncovered the first pieces of a puzzle that would shake the foundations of the estate. The betrayal had been buried beneath layers of arrogance and inherited trust, but Amara's mind had dug through the dirt and dust to reveal it all. "Show me," Sebastian said quietly, urgency lacing his tone. They pored over ledgers, letters, and account books late into the night. Candlelight flickered across their determined faces, illuminating the lines of concentration and tension etched into both of them. Each page revealed embezzlement, mismanagement, and greed, a conspiracy that had prospered under the guise of loyalty. Sebastian felt the anger rise like a firestorm within him, but Amara's calm, precise reasoning anchored him. "You see," she murmured, pointing to a series of entries. "The payments your father made to supposed contractors were diverted. The steward enriched himself at Ravenshire's expense, and he was aided by Parliament's oversight, or lack thereof." Sebastian's hands clenched around the edge of the table. "He betrayed my father. betrayed the estate, and nearly destroyed all of it, nearly destroyed us. Amara placed a steadying hand over his. And that is why we cannot falter. Now that we know, we act. Carefully, strategically. You cannot fight society yet. They will use every whisper, every glance, every doubt against you. But with evidence, with truth, we hold the upper hand. The following morning, society's reaction was immediate. Visitors arrived with forced smiles, the glint of judgment in their eyes. Letters, rumors, and scandalous insinuations flew faster than the carriage wheels could carry Sebastian and Amara across the city. Every encounter tested their composure. The Queen's advisors, distant cousins, influential merchants, all demanding explanation, submission, or disavowal of Amara. Sebastian's resolve hardened with each challenge. "They will not dictate my conscience," he declared, voice echoing across the hall. "Ravenshire is not theirs to manipulate. And she," he gestured to Amara, "deserves the dignity denied to her for too long." Amara's lips quirked in a faint, approving smile. She had risked freedom before, risked life itself, and now, standing in the halls of England's judgment, she felt something stir that she had never allowed herself. Hope. Not naive hope, but the calculated, fierce kind that comes when truth and courage intersect. Yet even as they began to untangle the web of corruption, danger lurked in whispers and shadows. The Dowager Duchess, influential peers, and Parliament's bureaucrats represented an invisible force, testing not only Sebastian's resolve but the fragile trust between them. Each step forward demanded courage, and every revelation threatened to tear apart the careful balance they had established. "Can the world truly change?" Amara whispered as they studied the latest ledgers. "Or are we simply stirring ghosts that will haunt us endlessly?" Sebastian placed a firm hand over hers. "If courage alone can change the world, then yes. We are stirring, not ghosts, but reckoning. And we will survive it. Together." The candle flickered one final time, casting long shadows across the table, across the room, across the lives of two people bound by defiance, intellect, and an unspoken, growing attraction. The first battle had been won, not against society entirely, but against ignorance, greed, and the limits imposed by birthright. As the city settled into night, Sebastian realized the stakes had risen far beyond Ravenshire's accounts. Their freedom, their love, their very standing in society was on the line. And yet, in Amara's unwavering gaze, he saw a reflection of his own courage, and the unspoken promise that whatever storms awaited, they would face them side by side. "What will you do when they come for you?" she asked, voice soft but steady. He took her hand, holding it as if anchoring them both against the tide. "I will fight as long as I draw breath, because I know now the battle is not only for Ravenshire. It is for us." The Queen's messenger slammed the parchment onto Sebastian's desk, the seal of Parliament stark against the cream paper. The words inside demanded his immediate appearance, questioning his judgment, his loyalty, and most damningly, his association with Amara. His fingers trembled as he read the accusations, ink smudged by his shaking hand. Every breath felt suffocating, the walls of Ravenshire closing in, as if the estate itself mourned the storm brewing within. Amara stood behind him, arms crossed, her dark eyes hard and unyielding. "They will not break us," she said, though even her voice betrayed the shadow of doubt. "They can and they will," Sebastian whispered, pressing the letter against his chest. "Mother, Parliament, society itself, they all see you as a threat, not an ally. They will strip everything from me if I falter." The Dowager Duchess appeared in the doorway, silk rustling like dry leaves. "Sebastian, you have lost all sense of propriety," she said, voice sharp enough to cut. This freedwoman, your companion, your confidant, threatens the very name of Ravenshire. I will not witness it." Amara's eyes flared. "I am no threat. I am the reason Ravenshire stands at all." Sebastian held up a hand to stop the argument, his mind a whirlwind. Each day had brought battles of numbers, threats, and whispers, but now the enemy was tangible, relentless. Parliament would strip his authority, society would ostracize him, and even those who owed loyalty to his father might turn. The night dragged on, heavy with tension. Candlelight flickered across ledgers, maps, and letters, shadows leaping like specters of doubt. Amara and Sebastian pored over every account, searching for leverage, for proof to hold against the unyielding pressure. Each new discovery of deceit, each hidden betrayal, stoked both anger and desperation. "Why would anyone betray my father?" Sebastian muttered, gripping the edge of the table. He trusted them, built them up, and they poisoned Ravenshire from within. Amara's voice was steady, cutting through his despair. "Because power corrupts, my lord, and because society fears what it cannot control. That is why they attack us. They cannot tolerate a duke who chooses merit over birthright, a woman who refuses to be silenced." The following days became a battlefield of their own making. Society's disapproval manifested in pointed letters, cold stares from merchants and nobles, and subtle but deadly sabotage of estate operations. Rumors of impropriety spread like wildfire, fueled by the Dowager Duchess's subtle manipulations. Every interaction, every handshake, every glance in the drawing rooms of London carried the weight of judgment. Sebastian paced the halls, mind racing with strategy and contingency, yet the gnawing doubt persisted. Could he defend Amara against such relentless scrutiny? Could he save Ravenshire from financial ruin while navigating the treacherous currents of aristocratic expectation? Amara approached him quietly, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "Sebastian," she said, her tone unwavering, "you must remember this. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in the face of it. We cannot falter now, not when we are so close." He exhaled sharply, his chest tight with frustration and longing. "It is not just fear, Amara. It is exhaustion, betrayal, the weight of knowing that every misstep could ruin us both. I fear that even with all the truth, society will refuse to see reason." She tilted her head, eyes gleaming with conviction. "Then we show them reason, with evidence and resolve. We show them that intelligence, loyalty, and integrity matter more than titles and prejudice. And if they cannot see it, we do not bend to their ignorance. We stand together against it all." Days later, the confrontation came in the form of the Dowager Duchess herself, her presence in the estate like a storm cloud darkening every room. "I will not allow you to sully this house further," she snapped, voice echoing through the grand halls. "If you continue down this path, Sebastian, you will be disowned, and Amara, she will be expelled from Ravenshire by law if I must see it done." Amara stepped forward, shoulders squared, eyes meeting the Duchess's without flinching. "You underestimate the power of truth," she said, voice steady, each word a challenge. "You underestimate the strength of a bond built on respect and shared purpose. You will not frighten me nor him into silence." Sebastian felt a surge of pride and fear collide. Her courage was incandescent, defying everything society demanded of her. But even as he admired her, the weight of what lay ahead pressed down, the scrutiny, the parliamentary summons, the whispers in the drawing rooms, the potential ruin of Ravenshire itself. That night, alone in his chambers, Sebastian stared at the ledgers strewn across his desk. The candlelight flickered, casting long shadows that mirrored his fears. Amara's words echoed in his mind. Courage is not the absence of fear. He closed his eyes, envisioning the estate restored. Society's scorn turned to begrudging respect, and the quiet promise of partnership with the woman who had saved him from himself. But even as hope flickered, doubt remained. Would society, bound by rules older than their love, allow them to survive? Could they weather the storms of judgment and betrayal? Or were they doomed to see Ravenshire crumble despite every effort? In the silence of the night, Amara approached, standing beside him without a word. Her presence was a tether, a reminder that even in the darkest hour, they were not alone. Sebastian reached for her hand, fingers entwining with hers, a quiet pledge against the world. "We face them," he whispered. "Whatever comes, together." She nodded, determination lighting her eyes. "Together, always. But we must be prepared to fight, not just for Ravenshire, but for ourselves, for freedom, for truth." And as the candle burned low, the city outside, unaware of the battles waged within the walls of Ravenshire, Sebastian realized the truth he had long resisted. The darkest hour was not only a test of courage, but a crucible that would define everything he and Amara were willing to fight for, and what they were willing to lose. The hammer of Parliament's gavel echoed in Sebastian's mind long after he left the chamber, each strike a reminder of how close they had come to ruin. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, knuckles white, heart hammering as if it would burst through his chest. Outside, London moved on, oblivious to the storm that had nearly swept him and Amara from existence. But inside him, the embers of fear and despair had begun to ignite into something sharper: determination. Amara's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Sebastian, you cannot waste another moment in doubt. We know the truth now. We have the evidence. We have each other. It is time to act, or we lose everything." He looked at her, eyes blazing, chest heaving. "Do you think I haven't considered every path, every consequence? I have lived in fear of losing you, losing Ravenshire, losing myself. I have walked through fire and come out scorched, and yet here we stand." Her hand found his, steadying, grounding. "Then we walk forward, together, not as master and servant, not as duke and freedwoman, but as equals, as partners. Ravenshire is ours to reclaim, but only if we trust ourselves and each other." Sebastian exhaled a long, shuddering breath, and for the first time in months, he felt a flicker of clarity. Merit, not birthright, would define him. Strength, not fear, would guide him. And love, fierce and unwavering, would anchor him. The estate had already begun to shift under Amara's meticulous eye. Accounts previously hidden in shadows were revealed, corruption exposed, and loyal staff empowered. Each discovery fueled their strategy, each proof of deceit a step closer to reclaiming Ravenshire. Yet danger lurked in the whispers of servants, the cold glances of visiting nobles, and the subtle manipulations of those who wished to see the Duke fail. Sebastian strode through the estate's grand hall, Amara at his side, and for the first time, he felt the pulse of leadership in his veins. "We confront them today," he said, voice low but firm. "The stewards, the conspirators, anyone who dared betray this house, they will answer for their actions." Amara's lips curved in a faint, approving smile. "And we ensure that every lie is laid bare, every theft accounted for. But we must also be mindful. Society's eye is cruel, Sebastian. One wrong move, and they will turn even our allies against us." The confrontation was tense, every word a careful strike. The corrupt stewards, faced with ledgers and testimony, attempted feeble denials that crumbled under scrutiny. Each revelation was a dagger, piercing through years of deceit. Sebastian watched them, a mixture of anger and satisfaction swelling in his chest. Every misdeed exposed was a step toward justice, a step toward reclaiming the life and estate that had nearly slipped through their fingers. "You underestimate the cost of your arrogance," one steward spat. But Sebastian merely shook his head, calm and precise. "It was not arrogance that guided me. It was truth, diligence, and partnership. Ravenshire stands because of those values, not because of inherited title alone." Amara stepped forward, voice steady, intellect sharp as a blade. "You relied on deception and greed to secure your position. We rely on honesty, strategy, and courage." "And courage," she added, looking directly at Sebastian, "comes in many forms. Some must fight with swords, others with wit. We have both." As the steward's protests faltered, the household staff whispered among themselves, admiration creeping into awe. Loyalty had shifted. Respect earned not by blood, but by intellect and integrity. Ravenshire's foundation, once cracked by treachery, began to solidify anew under their combined leadership. Later, standing together in the garden, Sebastian finally allowed himself a moment of quiet triumph. The estate's future was no longer uncertain. The path had been carved by their determination and partnership. "We did it," he murmured, voice almost disbelieving, eyes scanning the familiar horizon that now felt less like a gilded cage and more like a realm of possibility. Amara's hand brushed against his, fingers intertwining with his own. "We did it together," she corrected, her tone tender, but resolute. "Do not forget that, Sebastian. Neither of us could have succeeded alone." He gazed at her, heart swelling with a mix of awe and desire. "You have taught me more than any tutor or court could," he said softly. "You have shown me the value of wisdom over title, of courage over fear, and of love that challenges as much as it comforts." Her smile was faint, knowing, and yet filled with warmth. "Then let us continue, for there are still battles ahead, social, political, personal. But now we face them not with fear, but with certainty. Ravenshire is ours not because we inherited it, but because we earned it." That evening, as the estate settled into the calm after a storm of treachery and confrontation, Sebastian and Amara stood together beneath the moonlight, the cool air brushing against their faces. The weight of judgment and expectation had not vanished, but it no longer suffocated them. Instead, it had sharpened their resolve, strengthened their bond, and revealed the true depth of their partnership. "Do you ever wonder," Amara said quietly, "if we could have done this alone?" Sebastian shook his head, gaze steady on hers. "No. Alone, we would have faltered. But together, we are unstoppable. Ravenshire will thrive not because of birthright, but because we chose to fight for it, and for each other." And as the moonlight bathed the estate in silver, Sebastian realized that the turning point had arrived. The darkest doubts had been confronted, the fiercest obstacles faced, and in that crucible their love, partnership, and courage had been forged unbreakable. Whatever came next, they would face it as one, Duke and Duchess in all but name, united in intellect, heart, and purpose. The courtroom erupted with gasps as Sebastian slammed the final ledger onto the long oak table, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the chamber. Every eye turned, nobles and clerks alike, some in shock, others in thinly veiled fury. "This," he declared, voice unwavering, "is the truth. Every lie, every theft, every act of betrayal is laid bare. Ravenshire is owed justice, and it begins here." Amara stepped forward beside him, eyes blazing with intellect and defiance. "And let it be known," she said, voice ringing clear, "that the estate thrives not on titles alone, but on diligence, skill, and courage. We demand that those who sought to undermine it answer for their actions." A hush fell over the room. Even the Dowager Duchess, seated stiffly in her high-back chair, could not summon the words to protest. The ledgers, meticulously detailed, left no room for denial. Every misappropriated coin, every forged signature, every corrupt transaction had been exposed under Amara's sharp analysis. One of the former stewards attempted a hasty rebuttal, waving a hand dismissively. These are mere numbers. They do not reflect loyalty, heritage, the traditions of Ravenshire. Sebastian cut him off with a controlled roar of anger. Tradition is not an excuse for betrayal. You sought to destroy what my father built, and you relied on your rank to shield your corruption. That ends today. Amara, her tone now cool and precise, added, and if tradition means silencing talent and virtue because of one's birth, then tradition is broken. And we, my lord, have repaired what your father could not protect alone. The tension was palpable. Every noble in the room could feel it, the scent of ink, dust, and power, mingling with fear and awe. For the first time, Sebastian saw the power of truth against entrenched privilege. Each witness they summoned, each ledger they presented, chipped away at the smug arrogance of the conspirators. Outside, rumors of the confrontation spread like wildfire. London whispered of the Duke returning with a freedwoman at his side, of society's most scandalous case unraveling in the courtroom. Some sneered at the audacity, others whispered admiration behind fans and gloved hands. But no one could deny the effectiveness of Sebastian and Amara's strategy. As the final testimony concluded, Sebastian rose from the bench, heart pounding, and met Amara's gaze. Her expression was calm, radiant with quiet triumph. He allowed himself a small, almost shy smile. "We did it," he murmured. "No," she corrected, hand brushing against his as they walked side by side. "We proved it. We did not merely win. We showed what justice, intellect, and courage can accomplish." The Dowager Duchess, her pride bruised, but her respect begrudgingly earned, approached at last. "I cannot claim to approve of your methods," she said, voice tight with restraint. "But I will acknowledge that Ravenshire stands stronger because of your partnership." Sebastian's chest swelled with relief, but it was Amara's presence that anchored him. She had not merely aided him. She had reshaped the destiny of the estate, restored its honor, and transformed the man who had been naive, uncertain, and untested. Weeks later, at the annual London ball, anticipation buzzed like electricity through the air. Noblemen and women murmured behind gilded fans, their eyes following Sebastian as he entered, tall and commanding in midnight blue tailcoat, Amara on his arm. A hush fell, broken only by the soft rustle of silk and whispered speculation. "This is the woman who restored Ravenshire," Sebastian announced to the room, voice carrying across the grand hall. "You may call her what you wish, mistress, advisor, friend, but I call her my duchess." Amara curtsied with poise and brilliance, chin lifted, eyes unwavering. The crowd's whispers turned to stunned silence, admiration struggling to emerge through layers of shock. The air was thick with tension, scandal, and awe, but it was the quiet power between Sebastian and Amara that commanded attention, not the scandal itself. Later, outside under the pale glow of the moon, the world finally faded. The cobblestone streets shimmered with silver light, and the distant hum of London seemed 1,000 miles away. Amara leaned against him, a soft exhale of relief escaping her lips. "You freed me, Sebastian," she whispered, voice trembling with a mix of vulnerability and triumph. He held her close, eyes reflecting the same moonlight that bathed them. "No," he said softly, fingers tracing the curve of her hand. "You freed me first. You taught me what it means to lead, to trust, to fight for what is right. Without you, Ravenshire would have crumbled, and so would I." They lingered in the cool night, wrapped in each other's presence, the trials of the past months fading into quiet victory. The estate was restored, society's judgment weathered, and their partnership, forged in fire and adversity, was solidified. Amara tilted her head, a sly smile curving her lips. Do you think they will ever stop whispering? Sebastian chuckled softly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Let them whisper. They are too late to change what we have built. Ravenshire belongs to us, our minds, our courage, our hearts. A breeze swept through the gardens, carrying the scent of roses and the faint tang of rain. The Duke and his Duchess stood together, victorious not because of inheritance alone, but because they had earned every triumph with intellect, bravery, and unwavering love. And as they walked back into the estate hand in hand, Sebastian knew the truth. They had not merely survived society's scorn, they had reshaped it, proving that partnership, merit, and love could triumph even in the most rigid of worlds. The first scream tore through Ravenshire's grand hall like a knife through silk. Sebastian spun, heart hammering, as a shattered vase tumbled to the marble floor, shards glinting like splintered stars in the candlelight. The steward responsible for the disturbance froze, eyes wide and guilt-stricken, and the assembled crowd held their collective breath. This was the crescendo of tension that had been building for months, the culmination of every secret, every betrayal, every calculated move that had led to this singular, charged moment. Sebastian's chest ached, not with fear, but with a fierce, burning determination. Ravenshire's fate and the fragile thread of their social standing balanced on the edge of a knife, and he would not allow it to fall. Amara's hand found his, cool and steady, grounding him in the storm of emotion that threatened to engulf him. Sebastian, she whispered, voice urgent yet calm, every eye is on us. They are waiting for weakness, for hesitation. But we are ready. Do you see it? He did. The room was thick with expectation, every nobleman and woman poised to pounce on a single misstep, every whispered murmur a potential dagger aimed at their reputation. But he saw more than fear. He saw loyalty beginning to bloom, faint glimmers of admiration shining through the veil of doubt. Every ledger, every detail meticulously unearthed by Amara's brilliance had begun to shift the tide. He drew a slow, deliberate breath, his hand tightening around hers. I see it, he said, voice low but filled with steel. And we move forward together. No hesitation, no fear. The first confrontation came swiftly. A former steward, emboldened by the whispers of allies in the chamber, stepped forward with a sneer. You dare parade this freedwoman, as the savior of Ravenshire? Do you think society will allow it? His voice shook slightly, betraying the uncertainty beneath his bluster. Amara's gaze met his unflinching, and she spoke with a clarity that silenced the room. Society may whisper, but the truth is immutable. Ravenshire is restored not by whispers or appearances, but by skill, intellect, and justice. Every action you took in secrecy has been revealed, and every deception accounted for. Sebastian stepped forward, voice rising, resonant with authority he had only begun to claim. We do not seek permission from tradition, nor validation from those who hide behind title alone. Ravenshire stands because of truth, and those who value it will stand with us. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some admiring, some incredulous, others enraged. The stewards and conspirators sputtered, their carefully constructed masks of confidence cracking under the weight of undeniable evidence. Ledger after ledger, proof after proof, Amara laid bare the corruption that had plagued the estate, each revelation a calculated strike that undermined years of deceit. Sebastian felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for her. Every number she had deciphered, every strategy she had devised, every challenge she had met head-on had transformed Ravenshire's fate and his own. He had doubted, yes, stumbled through uncertainty, but together they had wielded intellect as a weapon, love as armor, and courage as a shield. Outside, the servants and staff watched silently from behind curtains and doors, tension written in every furrowed brow. Many had feared exposure or punishment, Yet the undeniable justice of their leaders' actions began to inspire loyalty. Some whispered amongst themselves, hope threading through the fear, realizing that a new era had dawned, one built on merit, integrity, and partnership rather than fear and hierarchy. Hours later, after the confrontation had formally concluded, Sebastian and Amara walked together through the estate's gardens. The moon hung low, casting silver light across manicured lawns and hedges, illuminating the two figures with a gentle, almost reverent glow. Each step was deliberate, measured, their bodies moving in perfect harmony, reflecting a bond forged in fire and hardship. Amara's hand brushed against his, a touch both tender and grounding. "Do you realize," she said softly, voice carrying the weight of months of struggle and triumph, "that we have changed everything? Not just Ravenshire, but the expectations of everyone who doubted us." Sebastian exhaled slowly, gaze sweeping the quiet estate. "I realize it," he admitted, voice hushed yet resolute. "And I realize more than that. I understand now what it means to lead, to fight, and to love in a world that constantly seeks to define us by what we inherit rather than what we achieve." She tilted her head, her dark eyes reflecting moonlight like polished obsidian. "And yet, despite everything, there are still those who would see us fail. The whispers will continue. The judgment will linger. Do you fear it?" He smiled, faint but unwavering, lips curving with quiet defiance. "Fear is natural, but it does not control me. Together, we have faced every storm, every lie, every betrayal. The whispers cannot touch what we have built, the love, the trust, the respect we have earned. That is ours alone." Their fingers intertwined, a silent promise binding them beyond words. Each heartbeat echoed in tandem, a rhythm of triumph and resilience, a testament to the trials they had overcome. The estate, once a fragile remnant of mismanagement and treachery, now thrummed with potential, guided by intellect, courage, and a partnership that defied tradition. In the following weeks, London began to murmur in a new tone. Society could not ignore the shift. The Duke and his brilliant, courageous partner had reclaimed not only Ravenshire, but also their narrative. The scandal had transformed into admiration, begrudging at first, then genuine acknowledgement of Amara's role and the Duke's steadfast support. Invitations once denied arrived with careful etiquette, and eyes that had once dismissed Amara as an outsider now followed her with a mixture of awe and respect. The pinnacle of their triumph came at the annual London Ball, where the city's elite gathered under glittering chandeliers and walls draped in velvet. Sebastian entered with Amara at his side, the hush of anticipation tangible. Guests parted as if the world itself made way for their presence. Every whisper, every glance, every quiet gasp was a note in the symphony of their victory. He lifted his chin, voice carrying across the opulent hall. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, heart pounding with exhilaration, "you may call her what you will, but to me, she is more than advisor, more than companion. She is my partner, my equal, my duchess. This is the woman who restored Ravenshire, who challenged me, who taught me what it truly means to lead and to love." Amara curtsied, head held high, eyes bright with triumph and pride. The crowd's whispers turned to admiration, their shock tempered by undeniable respect. She had not simply survived society's scrutiny. She had transcended it, becoming a symbol of intellect, courage, and unwavering principle. As the music swelled and guests moved around them, Sebastian pulled her aside to a quiet balcony overlooking the city, the night sky stretching infinitely above them. The cool breeze carried the scent of roses and distant rain, wrapping around them like a promise. "You freed me," Amara said, voice soft yet firm, vulnerability and strength intertwined. "You believed in my mind, my courage, my worth when the world refused to see it." He cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing along her cheekbones, eyes reflecting the moonlight. "No, Amara," he murmured, voice heavy with emotion. You freed me first. You showed me what it means to trust, to fight, to rise above fear and expectation. You taught me that love, partnership, and courage are worth more than any title. A smile curved her lips, small yet radiant, the culmination of months of struggle, triumph, and deep, transformative love. Then let us move forward, she said, voice steady, heart open. Not just as Duke and Duchess, but as equals, as partners, as a force that can shape Ravenshire and the world together. He nodded, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead, the gesture tender and filled with promise. Together, he agreed, the word carrying the weight of victory, love, and unbreakable unity. The night stretched on, stars sparkling above as they stood hand in hand, the estate behind them restored, society challenged, and their hearts entwined. Ravenshire was no longer merely a title or a burden. It was a testament to what they had endured, achieved, and discovered, that courage and love, intellect and partnership could overcome any obstacle, mend any wound, and transform even the most rigid of worlds. And beneath the serene glow of the moon, Sebastian and Amara understood the profound truth of their journey. They had not simply survived the trials of society, betrayal, and expectation. They had rewritten the rules, earning not just Ravenshire, but a life defined by freedom, respect, and enduring, fierce love. The night whispered around them, gentle yet insistent. The world could attempt to judge, to limit, to constrain, but they had discovered something stronger. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were free. Together, they were love made manifest, unshakable, and eternal. Sebastian lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a soft, reverent kiss against her knuckles. "The future is ours," he said, voice steady with certainty. "Ravenshire is ours, and so are we." Amara's eyes glimmered, a reflection of the moon and the fire that had carried them through every storm. "Yes," she whispered, voice resolute and tender. "We are ours. Always." The world outside could watch, judge, and whisper, but in that moment, on that balcony, under the infinite sky, nothing else mattered. They had faced the darkest hours, endured betrayal, conquered fear, and emerged victorious, hearts intertwined and unshakable. As the first hints of dawn painted the sky in gold, they stood together, gazes locked, knowing that whatever challenges the future held, they would meet them as they always had, united, fearless, and infinitely devoted. The story of Ravenshire, once teetering on the edge of ruin, now belonged to two souls who had dared to rewrite fate, to defy expectation, and to love without compromise. And under the gentle light of morning, the estate and their hearts flourished, a testament to resilience, partnership, and the boundless power of love earned and shared. Top of form, bottom of form,